Welcome to Wartime CEO, hosted by entrepreneur, CEO, investor, veteran, and adventure seeker Jason Tirico. A podcast centered around helping you tackle life's battles. Learn essential skills like leadership and sales to creative solutions to deal with personal life issues. Life hits hard sometimes. Fight back with Wartime CEO. And now, here's your host, Jason Tirico.
Hello and welcome to Wartime CEO. I am your host, Jason Tirico, and today I have a very special guest that's joined us today. He was appointed by Maryland Governor Larry Hogan and serves as an assistant secretary for Project Core and Small Business Development. He's founded Minority Business Roundtable, MBRT, the first national organization for CEOs, as well as the U.S. Hispanic Youth Entrepreneur Education, USHYEE, and more recently has released a rock novel, Sleeping with an Angel. Please welcome Roger Campos. Hey, Roger, how you doing?
Doing just fine, Jason.
Thank you so much for joining the show today. Really appreciate your time. You know, I can only imagine how busy you are, especially, working with the state. And so really just want to thank you for making time to speak to me and the audience. And you have a very interesting story. I really want to bring to light. So many people can learn from your experiences. So just want to say up front, thank you for making time.
Sure, my pleasure.
So, I've known you for a very long time, over 10 years. After reading your resume and bio, I was like, oh my God, like I had no idea some of the nuggets and experiences you had. You and I, we first met for what was it? USHYEE, I believe was when we first met. And I know you started two nonprofits. How did that, which one came first? Was it USHYEE or MBRT, or were they kind of simultaneous?
No, it was the Minority Business Roundtable was the first nonprofit I started. That was in the year 2000. And then USHYEE came about with my good friend, Luis Barunda, who is now the Deputy Secretary of State working for the Governor of Maryland. Luis and I founded USHYEE in 2004.
Wow. Yeah, I haven't spoken to him either. I definitely have to give Luis a call sometime.
And you should probably have him on your show.
Yeah, I'd love to have him. He's such a great guy, wealth of knowledge, just like yourself. So what got you to start the MBRT, and what kind of inspired you to do that?
Well, I need to go back a little bit in time.
Okay.
To let you know a little bit about my background, which then you can understand how this evolved. But I'm a Californian. I grew up in California. I went to law school in San Diego at Cal Western, and I got my first job out of law school working in the federal government for a political appointee. And I was very fortunate to learn a lot very quickly, and I moved up the ranks.
Right.
And so I learned about federal contracting, procurement, networking. I actually went to Capitol Hill. I worked on Capitol Hill when I was working in the executive branch, actually in the Office of Management and Budget in the White House for 4 years, wow. Setting up presidential councils and commissions. And so I know my way around Washington, D.C. fairly well. And I was actually recruited to help run the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities.
Wow.
In Washington.
That's a huge program.
Yeah, they represent over 300 Hispanic serving institutions, which have 25% or more Hispanic enrollment in the country, and their colleges and university. And so I have a passion for helping, mentoring students. We had an internship program. It's called HACU, and HACU, that's short for the Hispanic Association of Colleges and Universities, has given opportunities to Hispanic college students. And right now, I believe there's about 12,000 interns that we placed throughout the federal government. And I was instrumental in ramping up HYEE to what it is today because of my experience networking in the federal government, knowing Capitol Hill, knowing members of Congress, and also knowing how to get federal contracts.
Right.
So I was very successful in getting about $12 million in contracts for HYEE to establish and really launch it successfully. But I learned during that experience how invaluable it is to help students.
Sure.
And to give them an opportunity to engage, to have them come to Washington, D.C., learn about the federal government, its processes, and meet people.
Wow.
And that's where I got the idea, actually, to help Hispanic college students with Luis Barunda to set up USHYEE and to provide scholarship opportunities for Hispanic youth, those who are in high school going on to college that needed help. And it was very successful until both Luis and I were appointed to our positions by Governor Larry Hogan after he won election in 2014.
Right.
And so I actually had my nonprofit experience under my belt before I started USHYEE and also before I started the Minority Business Roundtable. So in the year right after I had worked at HYEE, I was recruited again by the federal government to set up a new nonprofit organization called the Minority Business Roundtable. The Minority Business Roundtable is an organization made up of the nation's largest minority-owned companies, and that includes Hispanic American, Asian American, African American, and Native American.
Sure.
And we had also, I created a board of 30, all CEOs, all doing between 50 million and 2 billion each in a variety of trades and industries. I would say more than half of them had never received a federal contract, but they all wanted to receive a federal contract. They just didn't know how.
Wow.
And so that's the reason why they were interested in joining our organization, to learn more about how do you get a federal contract, what does it take, and how do you network into the federal space using connections both in the White House and in Congress.
Yeah, it's a big, process oriented, type of business development. It's not kind of your typical business development process. I applaud you for starting that. I mean, there's so many people, I meet, in my walks of life that want to understand and learn how to start contracting with the government and they don't know where to start or how to go about it. Fortunately, everything's kind of publicly available, but unfortunately it's very convoluted and, it takes a lot of, work to kind of dissect and kind of go through, especially if you're going through the FAR, right? The FAR is this huge manual to kind of go through and understand, government contracting and how it works, but everything's written out though, right? Just like the government, everything, it's got a standard operating procedure and how it works.
Well, there's a huge amount of resources.
Right.
There's a lot of research that needs to be undertaken in order to find those resources. And the government does a lousy job in marketing those resources to the public.
Right.
So the best way for anyone to learn more about government contracting is to talk to somebody who's done it.
Right.
So that way they can learn from someone firsthand their experiences, their trials and tribulations, and what it really takes in order to get a federal contract.
Absolutely. So I saw in your list of accolades that you helped draft the 8A program.
Yeah, so your listeners may not know what the 8A program is, but it's the Section 8A of the Small Business Act of 1953,
Sure.
which includes minority businesses. And I was very fortunate to be able to work at the Small Business Administration right after I worked in the Executive Office of the President. And I was very fortunate again to work with Congressman Perrin Mitchell, who is or was, he's deceased now, but he was the father of the 8A program, the Minority Business Program for the federal government, which currently exists today.
Right.
And I was responsible for implementing a lot of the procedures and the policy in the 8A program from the standpoint of working at the SBA and getting that information out to entrepreneurs and minority business owners that wanted to take part in it.
Sure. That's I mean, I'm very familiar with the 8A minority, the 8A program, and it's a great program. A lot of paperwork, right? A lot of stuff you got to do to get and become part of that program. But if you are part of it, the government sets aside, work, specifically for these businesses that are qualified.
Yeah. So some of your audience may be interested in that program, getting involved in it. If you're an entrepreneur, I recommend that you go to sba.gov and look at the 8A program. You can learn about its eligibility. One of the things I think is really important is that if you have a business, that you should have a solid revenue stream first before you even consider going into the 8A program. And I would recommend that you have about $1 million in revenue. And the reason is because the federal government is very sophisticated, very complex, and they're looking for companies that have the capability to do work and to do larger contracts.
Sure.
So if you have a solid base behind you, you're going to be more successful moving forward.
Agreed. I think another way to kind of develop that book of business is for some of these companies to partner with large companies that are looking to meet those socioeconomic and small business criteria, because every government contract will have within it a certain amount of small business that has to be met by the primary contractor, right? So some of those will have just qualify financially as a small business. Others need to be women owned, and others need to be, veteran owned or veteran disabled or Native American. And 8A is one of those socioeconomic categories that some of these businesses and contracts have to check the box on. They have to make sure that these companies are being included in these contracts. So I think that's another way that some of these companies can actually grow into that. And start developing that book of business and that revenue stream for some of those that, I may be contracting with the government, or, I have my clearance and I'm working with a specific agency and I'm working as a company, but I want to go into a 1099 and kind of grow off into my own business. Those are some ways that they can maybe do it. And we could have, I think we could probably, spin this off into an entire segment just on government contracting alone and kind of talk about that. But going back to the MBRT, and starting that nonprofit, I mean, what was that like? I mean, there are a lot of entrepreneurs and people that want to start nonprofits, and, yours is a fairly large and reputable one. How did you get, from, conception to, current state?
Okay. So I was very fortunate that we had a federal contract that launched us.
Oh, wow.
Department of Commerce. That was instrumental in us doing a study, to see who was out there. We had to find out what businesses and what was their ownership around the country. So we had to do that study first to find out who the people were. And then we found about 450 CEOs that met the criteria. And this was, back in 2000.
Sure.
And so we invited them to participate in an introductory meeting with myself and some other business owners, and we brought them to Washington, and we selected 30 that were very interested in moving ahead, learning more about the federal government, learning more about how they could access contracts and capital, and actually learning more about giving back to their community. Because what I found was that these various ethnic CEOs generally hired their ethnic background folks in their businesses. Asians hired Asians, African Americans hired African Americans, Hispanics hired Hispanics. That was very rewarding to me to see that these CEOs are giving back to their community.
Absolutely.
And then a lot of them went further and they donated money to causes like the organization that Luis and I formed, USHYEE, to give back, because MBRT and USHYEE are our 501c3 charitable organizations. So whatever money that we raised was a complete 100% tax write-off for the person who, or the company that donated to our cause.
Sure.
And then what I did after I found the 30-member board, and I made this very interesting for the standpoint of the members, so that they could engage other like minority entrepreneurs. And we had 10 African Americans, 10 Hispanics, 10 Asians, and Native Americans, including 8 women. So we rounded out to 30. And we made it so that everyone had a voice, and would participate in some of the policy discussions that I arranged with the White House and with members of Congress. And we would actually go to the White House. We would go to the various committees in Congress, the Small Business Committee in particular, both the House and the Senate, where they could have a dialogue with senators and representatives and White House people, including the president and vice president, on their issues, so that they were heard, their issues were heard, and they had ideas on how to help other business owners become successful. And so it was really a great opportunity for them, where they didn't have that opportunity before, to meet with their elected representatives and the president and vice president of the United States.
Wow, that is amazing. I mean, just hearing that, I'm sure you how did that make you feel? I mean, that had to be, you had to have felt a lot of pride in being able to help these companies and minorities kind of progress.
Well, like I said before, I learned early on that my mission was helping people.
Right.
And I always put that first, so that I knew my way around Washington. They didn't. Right. I wanted to impart my knowledge so that they got the real benefit, that could help them in their business.
Sure.
And I'm telling you, it really worked. I had a couple of members that were appointed to presidential commissions. I had a couple of members that increased their revenues tenfold, as a result of this interaction that we had, given the opportunity for them to introduce themselves to the federal market space.
Certainly. So what I would imagine, kind of switching over to USHYEE and starting that nonprofit, was that a little bit more organic, or was it a little bit more streamlined
Well, Luis and I were very close friends. We had the same thought process of helping and bringing people up and mentoring students.
Sure.
And so we had to go out and raise money, corporate money. And because of my role with the Minority Business Roundtable, I was able to bring in capital from corporations. He was able to bring in capital. Together, we raised a lot of money that went for scholarships to help Hispanic youth.
Wow.
And we did events. We had dinners, receptions. We put together a forum at UMBC, that's the University of Maryland, Baltimore County.
Sure.
And we have the governor speak to these students. So we used our connections with the government and officials in the government. President Freeman Rabowski at UMBC was so supportive, and he spoke at our event. We set up college students to be the high school student mentors.
Mm-hmm.
And we put together a 3-day conference where the high school student could actually live in the dorm.
Wow. And
get a college experience. So it's kind of interesting because my current assistant, is one of those interns.
Oh, right. Yeah. How could I forget? No, that's amazing. So, so let's say, we have listeners that want to start nonprofits. What is that process like? And how hard is it to start a nonprofit?
It's really easy. But the first thing you have to do is figure out what you want to do. So, and you have to have a passion for it, something that you really want, and something that is just so burning, that you just really need to do something and help people. And then, if you don't know how to work with the regulations of setting up a nonprofit, get with an accountant. Most accountants would do it pro bono. They do it free, just to help you.
Right.
All you have to do is ask. So it doesn't cost very much to do that. The hard part is really figuring out your mission and then writing a business plan, and taking the next step to get money into your organization. Getting money into your organization is the hardest part.
Right. I can imagine.
And figure out programs, figure out how you're going to implement your strategy and your business plan.
And what are some of the typical ways somebody can, generate that revenue, especially in a COVID environment like today, right? Just because, we can't interact right now like, we normally have, where we may have some, I guess, events and things of that nature. What are some other ways and ideas that you might be able to share with some of the audience?
So it's extremely difficult right now to raise money. Right. Even well-established nonprofits are having difficulty because most nonprofits raise money through dinners, receptions, events, and you can't really do that right now. So that revenue stream is dried up.
Right.
So my suggestion for anyone who's interested in doing God's work is to be a volunteer first. Volunteer, give your time and energy into something that you believe in, and then perhaps work with that organization and see if maybe they would support you.
That's a really great suggestion. I think the art of kind of starting from the bottom and learning how the industry or that business works, has kind of been lost, almost as an apprenticeship almost, right? Because you're getting in there, you're learning, the ins and out of a business. How does it actually work? who does what. There's, even in the government contracting industry, there are very niche positions that they don't equate to other organizations. I mean, some have a director, some have a CEO, some have a president. The government contract industry, I mean, one that I had to learn and understand, which I'd never heard of before, was a capture manager. I was like, what are they capturing? But, that's the guy that's actually running their deals. He's kind of the one that's responsible for winning deals for the company. So that's great advice. I think that's really instrumental in trying to, if you're interested in starting a nonprofit, go work for a nonprofit first. And you clearly, they're always looking for help. So you should be able to find one that you're passionate about. One, you'll be giving back, and then, you'll be learning how it works. I think that's definitely invaluable. Hello, guys. This is your Wartime CEO, Jason Tarico, and want to thank you for listening to this show and bring you a brief message from our sponsor. Our sponsor today is Anchor. If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast, and it's absolutely free. There's a creation tool that allows you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many other distribution platforms. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. Now back to the show. So from that, you've I want to say recently, but you did receive an appointment by the governor. I mean, that's a huge honor, to receive an appointment. What was that like? How did you achieve that? Was that something you kind of strategically planned for and placed yourself into?
Well, because of my experience working in Washington, D.C., working in the White House, working in Capitol Hill with members of Congress, I have always had an interest in politics. And when Governor Ehrlich, during his campaign for governor of Maryland, I was helpful, and I served on his transition team. And they actually were very interested in having me join the Ehrlich administration at that time. But I had just started the Minority Business Roundtable, and I really didn't want to leave, that mission that I thought was really important to launch at a national perspective. And so the Governor Ehrlich appointed me to the Maryland Economic Development Commission, which is a non-paid honor. Mm-hmm. And I headed up the small and minority business component of the Economic Development Commission for 4 years. And Larry Hogan was part of Governor Ehrlich's cabinet.
Sure.
He was the appointments secretary, and I had the opportunity of meeting him. And then when he ran, he was on the campaign trail. We met again with Bob Ehrlich, and I just thought he had a good, strong message to the business community. And I have always been focused on business issues, not political issues.
Right.
My whole background, as I mentioned, is really not political. It's business,
Right.
and policies, and how you help business owners succeed and in implementing federal and state policies.
Sure.
So I focused on that, and I offered my assistance any way that that would be helpful. And he appointed me to his transition team. And that was in 2014, right after he won. And then his team suggested that I consider joining the Hogan administration. So there was a newly drafted piece of legislation called the Business Ombudsman, which was a cabinet ranked position reporting to the governor.
Okay.
And I thought that would be really interesting because I would be starting something from scratch. There had never been a business ombudsman. I was Maryland's first business ombudsman. So I was, had the ability to develop policy and to help business owners. So I was appointed, the governor appointed me to that position, and it was a great experience. I was able to help a lot of business owners overcome obstacles, all kinds of issues dealing with procurement, to name the number one issue, and how to get paid, once they had performed. And so there were a lot of small businesses that needed assistance. They didn't know how to get that assistance without hiring a lawyer. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to bridge their complaints and make them actually whole, some of them whole. And so I was very successful in helping business owners.
Wow. And
then the governor started a new initiative called Project Core, in which he gave or allocated about $75 million, and the city of Baltimore allocated $25 million, so it was $100 million to eliminate blight in Baltimore through demolition, through economic development, creating green space. And so I was asked to lead the effort to provide business support for that initiative and become Assistant Secretary at the Maryland Department of Housing, which is my current role.
So, having to start some new projects like that, I'm sure you've encountered a lot of challenges. I mean, what was one of the biggest challenges you encountered in this journey?
Okay, so the biggest challenge was the riots in 2015.
Okay.
And it was, we were just a few months into the Hogan administration. And in April 2015, we had the unrest in Baltimore City.
Right.
We had over 400 businesses destroyed, ransacked, damaged. And so I led the coordination of state agencies to provide relief to business owners. And I developed a series of workshops. We had the Maryland Department of Housing put together a $1.5 million fund. We were able to give out almost 50 loans. Mm-hmm. Many of the loans we gave to business owners, some of them didn't have any business records. A couple of businesses had been burnt, and they lost everything.
That's a lot. Wow.
And we were able to deploy the money, and it was successful in the sense that we got those businesses back up and running. That was the biggest challenge.
Wow. That's amazing. So, for those that are maybe interested in getting into, politics or being appointed into a position like yours, I mean, what would your advice be to them? Like, how would somebody go about getting appointed?
Well, I think you need to know people.
Right.
You need to get involved. For instance, chambers of commerce.
Sure.
Are great ways to get involved. There are a lot of people that are business owners who are politically connected, to politicians. So I think getting involved in anything, any kind of organization, like the chamber in particular, because that's business focused.
Sure.
And then know who your elected representative is and get engaged with them. If you have any issues or concerns, or even if you'd like to volunteer, provide expertise or help in any way.
Sure.
I think once they get to know you and you provide a valuable resource to them, I think they will recognize your achievement, and you may get an appointment, or who knows, you may decide you would like to be an elected official. I would encourage anybody who's
Right.
interested in politics to just get involved on
Right.
issues.
Right. So what about, we talk about and you hear about kind of like corporate politics, and I guess, I was thinking about it myself, someone in your position that is appointed to a position, does in your daily life, in your career as an appointed appointed to your position, is there more corporate or more politics involved in the actual execution, or what is that like?
No, not really. It's always about giving back
Okay.
to the community, helping the community. As a public servant, it's not about Democrat and Republican or independent. It's about helping the community. And so I work with everyone. I work with nonprofit organizations, community development organizations. I work
Right.
with Baltimore City Council people. I work with the mayor's office. I work with the governor's office. I work with corporations, large and small.
Sure.
My focus and attention is on the business owner. And I would say most business owners really don't care about politics. They care about business survival.
I agree. Yeah. Most business owners I know, I mean, they're, they want whatever's going to make sense politically, but their focus is on growing business, keeping their employees employed, figuring out what the next step is, how they can grow their business, and stay in business.
And some of them don't even, want to deal with politicians anyway.
Right.
So I don't focus on politics.
Got it.
I've always focused on one thing, and that is business policy.
That's a great policy to have, right? Focus on the business and the people, helping the people.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So, let's switch subjects a little. Tell me a little bit more about the rock novel, which I love that phrase. It's something that I haven't heard. Sleeping with an Angel. Tell us about the project.
Yeah, that was a labor of love. I wrote a novel called Sleeping with an Angel, and it is the first rock novel. And what's unique is that the book comes with a 13-track music CD, songs that were written and performed by my son, John Campos.
Wow. And
he is, as you know, you've met him, a singer and songwriter. Yep. He's very talented. He lives in San Diego. But this book was really about my journey, my lobbying journey.
Wow.
Because remember, my background has been Washington, D.C. and politics, and also lobbying members of Congress, both when I was at HAKU, when I was in the executive office of the president, when I was at the Small Business Administration. You're always dealing with members of Congress. And so after I left government, I was a consultant to 8A business owners. I was a lobbyist helping business owners network with people working in the federal government, both in the executive branch and also in the agencies and with Congress. And so this book, it was really about my journey and my experiences, and I fictionalized it. Not everything in this book is true, but it gives the reader an idea of what it was like, or what it is like in the world of politics and lobbying, and the smoke and mirror world, as I call it.
Wow.
In developing relationships, or actually destroying relationships. And
Wow.
that's what this book's about. It's about, overcoming fear and redemption with the help of my guardian angel. And I started this book when my dad passed away.
Wow.
I started it within a year of him passing away because I was searching for the meaning of life. I was torn because my dad, was a successful businessman. He had come as an immigrant from Mexico,
Wow.
and he became one of California's largest tortilla manufacturers and owned Mexican restaurants in Northern California.
That is amazing.
And he was well respected. And he was my mentor and my guide. And so I was searching for meaning of his death. And that's how I got an inspiration. One snowy night that turned into a snow blizzard where I was snowed in for a week. And I had an opportunity to think about my dad and to think about my life. And so I wrote this book based on it.
Wow. It's funny that you mentioned that, because I recently lost my father late last year. And, that kind of soul searching that you do, especially as that father-son relationship is definitely interesting. Like you, my father was my mentor. He was, I was his apprentice. He was a successful entrepreneur. He took me to work with him. He taught me so much. And since his passing, I've kind of been questioning a lot of, life. What's the meaning of life? What am I really here for? And that kind of thing. And it's actually one of the things that it's inspired me to start this podcast. So it just kind of, I relate is what I'm getting at. I can definitely relate to where you're coming from and how that inspired you. So let me ask you, so was it, you said you wrote the book, and then, so did the book come first, or was it like a collaborative effort with John when you started putting the whole project together, or?
Well, I first started writing the book, and then I thought it would really be cool if at various points, in the chapter, that the characters in the book could hear some music,
mm-hmm.
and that they would be engaged and have the experience, and the reader could have the experience of the mood and the emotion of music. And since my son is a singer-songwriter, I thought, what a great way to collaborate. So I thought of it from the very beginning.
Right.
It was something that I wanted to do. And in fact, I got an inspiration from Laura Esquivel. She's a Mexican writer. She wrote like Water for Chocolate,
mm-hmm.
and she wrote another book, and her book had a CD in it, but the CD of music was sort of like violins.
Okay.
And I thought, what? The incorporation of music in a novel is very unique, but no one has done a pop rock version with, where it's interspersed throughout the novel. So in various pages of the book, you stop and there's a song, and you can actually play the song.
Wow. That's pretty awesome. So
John was so creative. He developed the songs from scratch based on the chapter.
Wow. So he wrote and produced them based on it. Wow. That's pretty amazing. I mean, he's very talented, but that is definitely, takes it to a whole nother level.
And there's never been a father-son collaboration.
What was that like?
A rock novel.
Like working with your son, because you come from a more professional services background, and him being more of, creative professional, and being able to kind of merge both into a project. I mean, what was that like? I mean, I know
it was hard, to tell you the truth.
Right.
because here he is really creative, and he wanted a real hard rock edge to certain songs, and I wanted more the song to be timeless. So we had a music producer working with us, and he would sort of be the go-between where I would get a little bit what I wanted, and John would get a little bit what he wanted.
Wow.
And it worked.
Wow. That's great. That's amazing.
Yeah, it actually brought us closer together.
I'm sure it did. I mean, being able to work on a project like that, as father, son, I'm sure, parent, child.
Well, just so people know how long it takes to write a book and get it published. I wrote the basic story in 1 week, and it took me 4 years to get it published. Wow. And the recording took 1 year. So that's how long it takes. It took for me, not for everybody.
Sure.
Okay, but I'd never written a novel before.
So what were some of the challenges there in learning to what was kind of the biggest challenge you had in writing the novel?
I wrote the novel. I wrote the basic premise of the book. I started out longhand. I wrote 100 pages. And wow. I took it to my next door neighbor, who happened to be an editor of a magazine, and I left it with her, and I said, I'd like you to read this and tell me what you think. And about a month later, she came knocking at my door and said, I really like this. I think you need to get it published. She said, but you need to engage a professional writer that knows how to do dialogue and has the experience.
Right.
Okay. Even though I wrote the premise of the book, so I interviewed several writers, professional writers.
How did you go about finding them, though?
Just networking.
Just networking, asking around.
There's various organizations out there. There's the Independent Writers Group. There's local groups, and I just networked, and I met a few people, and I wrote a chapter, and I gave it to 3 writers, and I said, I'd like you to develop this. It was like a 3-page writing that I did. I'd like you to develop this, into maybe your thoughts for dialogue. And so I got back 3 different kinds of responses, and there was one that I really liked. And so she helped me, and she collaborated with me because, like I said, I'd never done this before. It was a brand new experience. It was one of the best experiences of my life.
Wow, that's amazing. That is really amazing. So, is there a favorite chapter, or so if anybody had to pick up your book and read or listen to a part of it, and they were going to look at anything else, what part of the book would you recommend them definitely looking into?
Okay, so the book is kind of mystical and spiritual.
Okay.
So even though it's about a Washington lobbyist and his journey, it's very spiritual. So the first chapter goes back in time. And I think that would be of interest to people that have a historical perspective, and you can make of it what you want. You can be, back during the Crusades.
Sure.
Or it could be during the Inca Empire. And it starts out in a historical type perspective, and then moves to modern day. And then towards the end goes back.
Wow.
I tried to interweave some mysticism,
mm-hmm.
some sorcery, spirituality, and then really some sort of like Jerry Maguire. I don't know if your readers have ever seen that movie, where the football agent ends up losing everything, sort of like that, where the character is very successful, but then ends up losing everything, and then realizes his real principles and his upbringing and roots with the help of his guardian angel. And then the readers can decide for themselves if the angel is real or not.
Wow.
So anyone who's interested can go to my website at sleepingwithanangel.com. You can read the first chapter. You can hear some music from the 13-track CD that accompanies the book.
Wow.
I've got great book reviews. You can read the book reviews. You can see some photos of myself and my son. And if you want to contact me, please, there's a section there. You can just send me an email, contact me. If you'd like to order the book, I'll sign the book for you.
Wow.
I think great. You'll really enjoy it. Your readers will enjoy it.
Well, no, that's awesome. Thank you, Roger. So I have a staple question that I ask everyone on the show. And, what was or is a recent challenge or obstacle you've faced where you had to put on what I'm calling your wartime CEO hat and kind of fight that battle?
Okay, so I can tell you that right now during this pandemic, it has been tragic for business owners.
Sure.
And I have been a business therapist to many business owners who either are on the verge of bankruptcy, they don't know what to do. I've helped to guide them to resources that are available. I've been able to help a few. Some I haven't been able to help.
Sure.
But it's very rewarding when I'm able to help just one business owner. And I feel that's sort of my calling. Mm-hmm. And I'll help anybody that I can. So if any of your listeners out there would like more information about me, about the work that I do for the governor, or about my book, please send them my way.
Absolutely. And you know what, you are a testament to that. I mean, everything in your career has been focused around helping businesses grow, helping people start businesses, and just helping people in general. So, just, thank you, on behalf of, all entrepreneurs out there, everyone that you've helped. I mean, you are definitely a living testament to that. Thank you again for being on the show. And is there anything else you'd like to say to our listeners before we wrap up?
Yeah, just be focused, develop your mission, your ideas, and stay focused on it and persevere, and you will be successful.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Roger. Again, if you'd like to reach out to Roger, as he mentioned, please contact him by going to his website, sleepingwithanangel.com. Please reach out to me if you have any additional questions or need help with any situation, entrepreneurial, career-wise, or personal. And you can see this show and others at the website, mywartimeceo.com. Thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Wartime CEO. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. There's strength in numbers. And with Wartime CEO and Jason, you'll never again fight a battle alone. Do you have a problem or issue you're battling? Please feel free to leave Jason a voice message at mywartimeceo.com. We'll see you next time.